Hello, everybody. I'm going to give it a few minutes, as I always do, to let people log on. Going to have a good video today. This video is aimed directly at the left, specifically. Um, Outside of the historic Republican Party, when we talk about Canada and the United States of America, almost every major mainstream party besides the Republican Party. And there's still what they call the Rhino. I guess this would go out to them. And it's really important I hit this one freedom specifically that I've heard time and time again as I have interviewed almost every political party. Believe it or not, everybody, I've been to so many meetings over the last 4 years with every major mainstream party, at least in Alberta, the federal parties, Canada, and I've had my forums with Americans and my phone calls. This is all about freedom of movement, a very, very important video. As I just presented, Jonathan Wilkinson, the Minister of Environment here in Canada with the Liberal Party, and Joe Biden, now President of the United States, 46th President, going to be. I know a lot of you are still going to be angry about that, but this video is not for you, actually, but I want you all to watch it. This video is absolutely for the Liberals, the Democrats, the Green Party, Alberta Party for us here in Alberta, Libertarians, and the list goes on, and I've tagged the hashtag in many of those groups, but I want to hit freedom of movement. Many on the left talk about this freedom of movement, including our Conservative Party here in Canada. They embrace CANZUK, and the number one argument they use is freedom of movement, as do Liberals, NDP, the Green Party, and the list of left-leaning parties goes on and on. Why I'm talking about freedom of movement right now and this historic argument on the Green New Deal is because we're going to break that down. Freedom of movement is different for every class of American. When I say American, I mean United States of America and Canada specifically. As now we see the Liberal Party of Canada, who has power, has gone and had a joint agreement here with Joe Biden of the Democrats to enforce a new reality, taking away the internal combustion engine from automotives, from the main average Joe Jane, United States of America American, and the Canadian in North America. They're going to take away the internal combustion engine. They want to roll out the expensive form of transportation, an electric vehicle, which requires charging stations that cannot be provided if you don't have a single unit dwelling that has a garage, whether attached or detached. And ultimately, most people can only have upwards of 2 vehicles with that charging station power. Everybody parking outside will not be afforded the same thing. Now, you can go to work during the day. Possibly you'll be able to have a charging station at work, but do you really believe that every parking stall is going to be afforded a docket charging station for your car? I don't think so. The mass amount of changes that have to be made, the protections in place to secure that that doesn't get stolen or wrecked outside is just not going to happen. It is literally going to be afforded to only a small class of Americans and Canadians going forward under the Green New Deal. They know this. They know that upwards of 80% of the population is going to be without transportation over the course of the next 5 years. That's the reality of the Green New Deal. I like to call it the Red New Deal, but we're not going to get into attacking. We're going to stay with facts, which statistics show America, there are less single unit dwellings with garage capacity than there is in Canada. For Alberta, my region, my province, only 41% are afforded that kind of living condition. The rest will never see the charging stations. They will be reduced if you're in an apartment or townhouse or any kind of high-rise development from 3-story onwards up to high-rise, more than 10-story. you will not see a docking station. You will not be able to even afford the electric car. It will not be an amenity you will get to enjoy. You will be reduced to their 15-kilometer radius. This is against the idea of freedom of movement. When the left tells you, which most of them do, their biggest argument about open borders, post-national state, having all of these multilateral agreements, the New World Agenda, globalization, what they don't tell you is exactly what now Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden are rolling out. Most of you will not be afforded freedom of movement. Not only in your daily lives, you're going to be reduced from what normally you could travel in a day, you're going to be reduced to that 15-kilometer radius. You're going to have to change your lifestyle, what kind of employment opportunities are available to you, and you're not going to have the same historical opportunities you had before. You're going to have to rely on employers to transport you to and from remote locations in primary sector industries, giving them full control over your daily lives while you're under their employment. This is definitely against freedom of movement. Something that the left brags about having the ability to travel in all nations all over the world. And I can promise you today, all of the highest tax socialist states in the world have the least amount of travel per capita than any of the freer societies. Even in the first world, most people do not and cannot afford freedom of movement. This is an historical fact. This is the greatest argument against the left, the radical idea that they believe that somehow in their new utopia that freedom of movement is going to get better. For most of us, over 80% of the population, freedom of movement is going to be restricted at an even greater amount. By the time we get through this COVID crisis that they've created with isolation, business shutdowns, and economic disturbances, and massive public debt, you are going to see an end of 2021 to the likes of which none of you are ever going to be worth the same again. The costs associated with your living day to day is going to be a heck of a lot more than it is now by large margins, depending on which region you live in and how centralization and wealth disbursement works. But for most people, 80%, you are going to be restricted in a large part. Your life is never going to be the same. And again, your freedom of movement is absolutely going to be shrunk. I urge everybody to check it out. This is Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau's Green New Agenda, the first rollout, the first absolutely published today rollout between Jonathan Wilkinson, Environmental Minister, and Joe Biden going forward as 46th President of the United States. This is their plan for America that absolutely does not include 80% of the population. People like Elizabeth May, who ran the Green Party, who rolled this out, promised all the tradespeople all the great and wonderful jobs. However, most of the metal trades are left out of that equation. Beyond being an electrician, most of you, there is no trade going forward in your Green New Deal. You're gone. Your trade doesn't exist in that world. You are to be part of the new idea of a guaranteed basic income, because most people cannot function in a 15-kilometer radius for employment. It doesn't work. For major municipalities, yes, they're going to enjoy having the control of all of the public transportation. People are going to get used to having to learn to have to travel and give up more hours of their day, being isolated more from their children, and experiencing many hours lost in production and quality of life. This is the reality. For rural America, rural Canada, which rural Canada is going to suffer even the most, as you're likely not to have more than 2 electric vehicles going forward. You just won't be able to afford it. It's not going to change how agriculture runs. as they go into the major carbon tax, most people will be forced out of rural America, both farming and an acreage living lifestyle, into the cities and towns. That's reality. You're going to watch your life change. And the new generation, young people, how many of you can start out with a single unit dwelling with a garage? Most of you must start like I did, and many, many others in my family, almost every American or Canadian's family. You start out in the apartment style living, possibly with roommates, trying to get your life together. There will be no electric car for you. There will be a limit of a 15-kilometer radius. You will never know anything more than staying in a tight radius and trying to make a life out of very, very little. That's reality. And this is the Green New Deal, which is really the Red New Deal. Now I ask Democrats, Liberals, NDP, Green Party, Alberta Party, and I know there are many more, Libertarians, the non-traditional national libertarian, I know that party's divided in half. Is this your concept of freedom of movement? Is this the concept that any of you see going forward in your utopia? As stats clearly do not lie. Clearly, this agenda, this utopia, is not going to work for over 80% of the population between the United States of America and Canada. Do you see how this is going to corrupt absolutely everything that you have tried to champion and speak forward, including the Conservative Party right here in Canada? When you talk about Kanzik and having all of these barriers down where you think you're all going to be traveling around, good luck. Do you know what the price of a plane ticket's going to be by 2030? If you are not making a minimum of $300,000 a year, you are not going to be flying anywhere. That will not be afforded to you. If you think this isn't reality, I suggest you look at the numbers rolled out right here in Canada, statistically and published out for all Canadians, Americans. This is your future should you follow Joe Biden's radical Green New Deal. The global reset, big nations like the United Kingdom that are tiny countries with an absolutely immense population, very dense in one area. And yes, maybe it works for New York and Los Angeles, but the real reality is for most Americans, the suburbs, this will not work for you at all. It will absolutely devastate your family and add hours and hours a day in loss of freedom of movement. That's the reality. Please share this. I hope this goes to the level of some of my Trump posts. I really do. I hope you all share it out there. Again, it's not for the traditional right folk, and I know that's most of my followers, but I pray that with the hashtags, this reaches the left side and at least ends up on the debate, and maybe Republican senators, congressmen, conservative MPs, MLAs, get it out there, get it out on that stage in legislatures, parliaments, assemblies, Congress, Senate floors. This is the truth. This is reality. And the numbers are right here in Alberta, Canada, right now, today, rolling all of this out. It only takes a good economist to pull that forward and present it to you all. And I will be, after I complete the works I'm engaged in right now, it's going to take me 4 days to get on that. But it's an important discussion to have right now. And this is a very, very important video to share. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye now.